One of the legends of the sport, Juan Francisco Estrada, takes on one of boxing's most promising prodigies this weekend in Jesse Bam Rodriguez in what appears from the outset, at least, to be a real passing of the torch kind of fight on Saturday over in Arizona. 34 years of age versus 24 years of age. And, the odds kind of reflect that ahead of this one. Jesse Rodriguez comes in as the prohibitive minus 585 favorite into this one, with Juan Francisco Estrada coming back at a healthy plus 35. It's honestly difficult to fault anything Jesse Rodriguez has done up to this point of his career. He looked incredible against Carlos Cuadras and Seo Rungvisai 2 years ago, kind of bursting onto the scene in a major way. Against two former champions at that. You could argue, maybe he could have done a better job in closing down Christian Gonzalez in their fight last year. But, the great thing about Bam's career so far is that the trajectory is always going up, even when he's looked like he's struggling in fights, and he showed that once again, in his last fight, the improvement, the frustration that he felt after that Gonzalez performance. One, he still managed to win even with a broken jaw. He put all that experience into his next performance against Sonny Edwards, and, it clearly showed as well. Bam looked exceptional in that Sonny Edwards fight. Sonny Edwards was a long-standing champion, one of the best defensive fighters in the entire sport to boot, and that elite defensive ability coupled with Edwards' top-level footwork as well led many, including myself, to expect a really, really difficult night's work for Rodriguez in that one. I thought the odds were actually a little bit wide on Edwards. I think he was going up around plus 240 or so on. But, bar a competitive opening few rounds, it really descended into a pretty one-sided fight from about the middle rounds on. So that performance combined with Estrada's long-time inactivity does give me some pause in terms of taking a shot with the aging champion in this one. Estrada didn't look particularly great against RG Cortez 2 years ago. He lost the Chocolatito 2 rematch immediately prior to that as well. I don't care what the judges said. Could even have made a case for the third fight going to Chocolatito. That was razor close. First half to Estrada, kind of second half to Chocolatito, although Estrada possibly won the 11th and 12th, but razor close fight nonetheless. So it's not exactly like Estrada's coming into this fight in some, red hot form either. And despite him saying all the right things, it's hard to shake the feeling off that this is a cash out fight for him at this stage of his career. And, if that's the case, he'll likely come unstuck against one of the brightest stars in the sport today in Rodriguez. So the question for me in this one is, look, how has that lack of activity affected Estrada over the last 18 months? Has that career-defining trilogy victory over Chocolatito left him, kind of without a purpose, so to speak? That was the goal. That was the big fight. Looked like a perfect time to walk off into the sunset as well. Enjoy your money. You're at the summit of your career. So if all that is tempting him back here is money, and kind of not legacy, the legacy that he enjoyed in that Chocolatito trilogy, his fights against Cuadras, Rungvisai, and so on, then maybe Bam possibly can get the stoppage in this one. Estrada has never been stopped across his career so far. He always brings that Mexican toughness into every fight. But we know Jesse Rodriguez is a close friend of Chocolatito's. They're always sparring together, same gym and so on. And I've no doubt that they've talked about the possibility of this scenario. Rodriguez potentially being the first man to stop Estrada inside the ring. So for me, the brain tells me from the outset, so what I've seen from both fighters, that Rodriguez likely wins this one on points. Like I said, he is the future of the sport, so he'll probably get the benefit of the doubt if it's close. Plus the fact that Estrada, like we said, has never been stopped previously. But I just can't shake that gut feeling telling me that, well over 18 months of inactivity here now for Estrada. And look, take out those first 6 rounds, like I said, against Chocolatito in that trilogy fight as well, which, really was vintage Estrada in fairness. He really hasn't looked at his peak across the last few years either. And I'm not seeing much desire for this fight. I've tuned into, the Matchroom program breaking down the fight and so on in terms of following both camps and so on. But the fire doesn't seem to be there for Estrada, in my opinion. And all that combined here, that's a dangerous combination that could well have Estrada staring up at the ceiling nights for the first time in his career on Saturday. So for me, I'm going to take a shot with Jesse Rodriguez to win late on Saturday, inside round 7 to 12, a plus 335, big price there. Estrada should be far too wily for him early on to get caught with anything big. Look, he's still arguably the better technician of the two. Estrada really is a high level boxer. But, as that pressure starts to mount, as, Rodriguez starts to get ratcheted up, starts to ratchet up the tempo across the later rounds, I've no doubt Prime Estrada would be there, more than willing to trade on the inside against Bam. But how much does this version of Estrada want it? The money's been made, the legacy's been set. He's got very little left to prove at this stage of his career. So, in a war of attrition type fight, does Estrada dig deep like days old? Or does he let the young lion have his day, retire as a Hall of Famer already? That's the question for me in this one. At a plus 335, I'm happy to wager some units on Bam Rodriguez to get the late stoppage this weekend down in Phoenix. Before I get into another quick breakdown of this weekend's other main fight in Teofimo Lopez versus Steve Claggett, I just want to mention that NFL is right around the corner, just over a month away from NFL preseason kicking off, and I was WagerTalk's #1 handicapper across all 5% NFL releases last season. Went 77.8% across all 5% NFL releases last year, and fully intend on starting out the same way this year. So for this week only, knock a further $150 off the already discounted early bird season special we've got going on right now over at my page by using code NFL150, which is good until this Sunday at midnight. So let's have another monster season ahead on the gridiron. Look, I'll keep the second one short. Steve Claggett comes into this fight. He comes to fight, basically. It's as simple as that. And that sets up a really interesting dynamic in this one, because similar kind of in respects to, Ryan Garcia and Oscar Duarte 6 months ago, for example, the longer this fight goes on, the more Claggett is continually pushing Teofimo back throughout the fight, looking to unload. This has the potential to be a tough night's work for Teofimo Lopez. That said, like most offensive fighters, Claggett can leave himself vulnerable to counter shots coming back at him on the other end. And, we all know that's Teofimo's bread and butter. In all honesty, he's always at his best when he's facing more offensively minded fighters, Josh Taylor, Richard Comey, and so on. So, this fight really all comes down to whether or not Teofimo can catch and hurt Claggett with something big here. Claggett hasn't been stopped in well over a decade now. You have to go back to the very, very start of his career to find that one stoppage loss. But he leaves enough openings that you would feel Teo should be able to capitalize at some point in this fight. Maybe similar to what we saw in that Garcia-Duarte fight, where it's looking dodgy. Duarte is kind of picking up the rounds. He's pushing them back, and then boom, out of nowhere, potentially close the show. So this is a tough fight for Teofimo, no question. Cladgett's no bus driver. He is he's offensively gifted in there, but his counter-punching ability, Teofimo's, should mesh well here with Cladgett's offensive momentum. And at minus 135 right now, I believe the play should be looking towards Lopez to get the stoppage on Saturday night. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below about either fight. Is Saturday a passing of the torch type fight between Estrada and Bam Rodriguez? And, what version are we going to get from Teofimo Lopez on Saturday? The Jekyll and Hyde career that he's had so far. Let me know down below. And as always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It's very much appreciated. And until next time, Slán Abhaile, and best of luck on all your bets.